Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Kendra and I paint with watercolor and gouache. Today I'm going to show you a painting that I was working on today, just a little small block of watercolor paper, and I thought I would give this a try. Now, before I said that I really like painting with watercolor and gouache, but the truth is I haven't met an art supply that I don't like. So I actually spend my time doing all the things, but I figured what I would show you here is watercolor. It's the thing I've been doing the longest. So this is an image you can see off to the left, my iPad, where I have an image of the trail at Latourell Falls, which is in the Columbia River Gorge. And we went out there last Saturday before things got a little icy and cold. We went out there when it was still a little bit nice. By nice, I mean nice and muddy and a tiny bit misty. But we had a beautiful hike. I think it was 2.5 or 3 miles to go up to the upper falls, and took pictures all along the way and marveled at the brilliance of the mosses all over the trees. And also what surprised me over there was that all of the leaves that had fallen from the trees are still a rusty red color on the ground. So with the green mosses and the rusty red decomposing leaves, you know, it's like Christmas. These are complementary colors. They are on the opposite of a color wheel, and they were just popping all over the trail for me. And I was doing my best not to slip, not to fall down. Although I did at the end. Right at the end, I fell down and caught myself with my hand, and everything is fine, but I could feel the strain for a couple of days. So here you can see me painting or drawing with a watercolor pencil, and I'm using a stick as a straight edge. Instead of using a ruler, I like using a stick, especially for natural things like trees, because the stick is a little bit bent and it gives a much more authentic tree shape. So one of my advice to anyone starting in watercolor is to go outside and start collecting different sticks, because you'll use them to make marks and you'll use them as straight edges, and different ones have different properties. Like bamboo sticks are great. The stick that I have here, I don't even know what it is, but I found it in the fall. And I have a few other different, in fact, I even picked one up on the hike that we were on at Latourell Falls. So I've got the basic outlines of my picture with the watercolor pencil, which will dissolve if I want it to in water. But I sort of like the lines. And now I'm laying in the path, the trail. And I felt that the trail was rather purple. I'll put up a picture here so you can see the picture clearly that I'm looking at on my watercolor or on my iPad. And I thought a light purple color with some mossy green tree trunks would be awesome. And then the undergrowth that is a rusty red. I thought that trio of colors would be wonderful to look at. So as I was looking through my pictures, what drew me to this one is the overlapping that you see with the trees and the trail and the trees and other trees. And there's also a hillside that you'll see coming in later into the painting. So I felt that there was a lot of depth going on in the picture. which is funny. It's unlike the pictures that I took at the waterfall, which is what you might think of as the like best picture to do a watercolor painting of. But the picture of the waterfall doesn't have much depth. In fact, I'll post it for you here so you can take a look at the picture of Latourell Falls. And then there's another one of the upper falls. They were so powerful, those upper falls. The sound of that water, because it's winter and it's been raining, and waterfall hikes are the best in the winter because you have such powerful water coming over. If you wait until August, what you'll get is beautiful weather to hike in and not a muddy path, which is always nice. But the waterfall will be at its very, very minimum. So here we go with some overlapping of the trees. And you'll notice that I've painted the right sides of these trees for the most part. That's because I noticed that there's more light on the left side of the trees here. It has nothing to do with their orientation because the left side is the north side in this picture, but the hillside goes up to the south, right? To the right side. So the hillside is providing the shadow. So you'll see in a bit that I will paint the left side of those trees like a lighter yellow color. I'm using New Gamboge as my yellow. And then after that, I'll paint it over with a darker color and then scrape away to get back to some of those lighter colors. That's like the most exciting thing ever when you're doing this kind of thing, scraping it back after. So how's everyone doing today, this Friday in February? There's supposed to be some very serious weather happening on the east coast of the United States. And it sounds like the Midwest, maybe Texas, has kind of finally gotten out of it. Over here in the Pacific Northwest, we had a bit of a cold snap. I mean, for us, it was cold, but it's nowhere near what the rest of the country gets. Today I went out, took care of my mammogram. Yay, me! And then I went and took care of some groceries. And when I came out from the grocery store, now I tell you what, I have teenage twin boys, so I go grocery shopping at a restaurant supply store, and I buy things in bulk, like next level bulk. And so when I came out of the restaurant supply store with my, rolling cart, it's not even a regular shopping cart. It's like a board on wheels, full to the brim of, 6 dozen eggs and like a bag of lemons and a huge bag of potatoes and all those kinds of things. It was raining. It was in a downpour. It was a total downpour. And all the food was fine except for we buy gluten-free flour, and I had the gluten-free flour in a paper bag, and I got that into the van as fast as possible. I think it's going to be okay, but it'll have to dry out. So here you see I'm using that yellow, that New Gamboge, and then I use my piece of paper towel just to blot it out in places, just to keep those tree trunks kind of light, not too dark right away. Do you ever wonder what those knobby things are on the trees? Probably a bunch of you know. I've seen them in all different sizes. And when I was getting ready to make this video, I actually looked it up because I was like, what is that? What are those lumpy knots on the trees? They're called burls. In the United States, they're called burls. If you're in England, they're called burrs. But they're the result of some kind of stress on the tree, like either bacteria, fungi, insects. Sometimes insects lay their eggs in the tree, and then it encourages the tree to grow, more tree. And then sometimes freezing weather creates these. And in this location, all of those could be a factor for sure. It freezes in the gorge all the time. Columbia River Gorge is very windy and very cold in the winter. You never know. I mean, that road gets closed down, I don't know, multiple times each winter. Highway 84 that goes all the way out to, well, I think Highway 84 can go all the way to like New York or somewhere, but it's the main east-west road that goes through the northern part of Oregon. But compositionally, those burls are wonderful because they introduce an interruption to the lines, the sort of up and down verticality of those trees, of the tree trunks, and give some different compositional elements to the picture. So they're great. I think I probably added a few more than what the picture actually has. So I'm going through rather methodically. With watercolor, one thing always to keep in mind is you have to let it dry. You have to let each layer dry before you do something else to it. If you go in too fast and don't let it dry, most people describe it as turning to mud. You won't, the results won't be as brilliant. Because the neat thing of watercolor that is different from acrylic or gouache or oil is that they're transparent and we see the light of the paper behind it. And it is pretty cool to be able to see the glowing light of the paper behind the paint. And you can have 2 or 3 layers of paint and still see the whiteness of the paper shining behind. It's very, very neat. So today I learned that yesterday was the halfway point between the winter solstice and the vernal equinox. So for those of us in the northern hemisphere who are just holding our breath through winter, we're halfway there. We're more than halfway there now. Okay, now you can start to see this, and if I get really good at video editing, I might be able to zoom in, but for now, you'll just have to maybe wait until I hit a piece of the paper where you can really see those scrape marks coming through. The paint has to be wet on top for this to work, and the stick has to be rather sharp. So this bamboo stick that I'm using works great. I've also used other implements like a piece of plastic that I pulled off of like a printer cartridge as I was installing it. In my last video I show that works really great. As long as it's really sharp, you can get some great lines. And what it does, if you really push hard on the paper, is you actually scrape a little bit of the paper, the top layer of the paper off. So you'll see there, you can kind of see it, and then I dip it on my paper towel in order to like chuck that little bit of paper that I just scraped off of my block. You can scrape quite a bit before you'll get to the next page, because in a block, of course, the watercolor papers are all stacked on one another, and a block like this one is 20 pages of 140-pound paper. And 140 pound is the lighter weight of the watercolor paper, and it can handle quite a bit. I've never scraped through to the next page. So I would say just go for it. You don't need 300-pound paper. You can use 140-pound paper and still scrape away. You probably won't get to the next level. The biggest thing with 140-pound paper that you can find could be a problem is if you use a lot of water, then the paper will curl. Like once you break it apart from the block, and if you're like me and you set it out, I just prop it up against like a wall or something and look at it for a while, and I don't frame it or do anything like that. Sometimes my watercolors like to curl, and there's a fix for that. You can spray down the back side of the painting and then put it under something heavy like books, or I don't know if you have a chessboard or something like that. Put it on top and let it dry completely with this weight on top of it. I've even tried ironing my paintings. You use something to protect your painting and the iron from each other, like a light cloth, or I think I used a terry cloth. And that worked okay. But I've heard that it can dull your colors when you paint it, or when you iron over your paintings. And I suppose I could see that a little bit in the painting that I did that to. Anyway, that's the only downside to working with 140-pound paper, as I can see it, is that sometimes it curls up, and you need to go in and repair that afterwards if you're using a whole lot of water on your paintings. Here we go. Scrape away. Gotta be bold. Gotta go for it. And you see I have my paper towel right there because I know I'm gonna scrape away bits of the paper. And I don't want them staying on the paper at all. Those crazy trees with their burls. All mossy. All of them were totally layered up with moss. It was so beautiful out there. And usually I can't get a parking spot out there. Even the road that you drive on, it's called the old Columbia River Highway. And just this last year, from May until I think it was October, the city or the county, some agency has declared that you must buy a permit in order to drive on the old Columbia River Highway when it's peak season, because it has become so popular. People come in from all over the place just to go see Multnomah Falls and Latourell Falls and Horsetail Falls and all of the waterfalls that are along that road. And so the road gets totally clogged up, and so you have to buy a permit in order to drive on it in the summer, or in the spring, summer, or fall. But in the winter, you can just drive on it. And so we live not far from it, so I thought, oh, let's go while we have the chance. And we even found a parking spot at Latourell Falls, which, you know what, I think in all the years we've lived here, my husband and I have lived in the Portland area for 20 years. Yeah, 22 years, 24 years. We've been here for 24 years now, and it's the first time we've hiked this hike. That tells you, well, one, for the first several years of our marriage, we didn't really have the free time or the money to drive somewhere and go for hikes. But more lately, when we've been able to do it, you just can't find a parking spot. It's super popular. So see, now I have that dry yellow color underneath, the new gamboge that's dry underneath. And then this is a mixture of new gamboge and, let's look it up, Prussian blue. That's an M-gram color. And so now I'm going to scrape through it when the paint is just a little bit starting to dry, and the yellow color from below is going to show back through. It's just glorious. It's a lot of fun to do. It's one way you can just lose yourself in the process. And for me, when I'm painting something, a place that I've been before, and I want to like take that memory and sit with it for longer and then look at it later, it's just wonderful when I can lose myself in the process of painting it and come up with some textures that I love, and then always have this painting that reminds me of this experience. Here I am doing the same thing, only not quite as dark of a color. In the forest, of course, the colors of green are, like infinite. And so when I'm out there, I'm always looking at those colors and thinking, how can I replicate this thing? I mean, it's just, that's what makes it so relaxing to go out there, is to just look at all the different greens, the brilliant greens and the mossy greens and the yellow greens. There we are, pulling through with the stick. And I'm just going and visiting each tree and pulling it through. I was doing this in the afternoon before going out for my mammogram and grocery run. My life these days is that I have my twins at home, learning at home. They use an online charter school, which means they have teachers and they have a curriculum that they access through their iPads for the most part. And I sit there with them at the dining room table, and I'm available to help them mostly with math. With the other subjects, they can self-manage and learn it. But with math, I feel like you need to have someone there to sort out whatever is confusing right away, instead of scheduling a meeting with a teacher online and waiting for the meeting in order to figure out, what is a complementary angle or something like that. It's just better if you have somebody right there. And I love working with my boys on math. In fact, one of them is 2 years ahead of his grade level, and the other one's 1 year ahead on his grade level. And they're doing just gangbusters on all their subjects. But for math, I think because I'm right there and I know how they think, so I can get right in there and make sure that they understand the concepts. So I sit there all day with them, and I have to find something to do in between times. I cannot do my architecture work while I'm sitting there. So I'm an architect. I'm a licensed architect. And before the pandemic, that's what I was doing. Kids would go off to school. I would go meet with clients. I would design houses or work on apartment buildings or all kinds of different things. But pandemic happened and I immediately switched to becoming a homeschooling mom. But my brain still needs something to work on. So I've been searching for what to do. And I found that watercolor can work out quite well with teaching. Usually I wait until we're done with the math in the morning. They always start with their math, so I'm generally not interrupted. But if I'm drawing something, then that's really okay if I'm just starting out on something. And then I can get my paints out in the afternoon. And while they're just sort of still doing their lessons, but sometimes need a little reminder to be on task. Or maybe they do have a question, and every now and then there's a question. I can assist with it, help with it, figure something out with them, but also have something for myself. Yeah. So here I'm going back in with my watercolor pencil where the paint is wet on the page. So it really reacts very well to what I'm drawing on. And when it doesn't, you see that I just dip the pencil right into the swish water. And there we go. And that makes it nice and juicy. It kind of feels almost like an oil pastel, only not as thick. And what I'm putting in there is texture, but it's also trying to indicate like that dead foliage that you find everywhere at this time of the year. And what I'm trying to do with the hillside is to make the value of the hillside darker, definitely darker than the path, and also a bit darker than the trees. So you see the rusty reds, those I want to get those. I want to bump those values up so that the painting pops. It's the most easy technique to, well, maybe it's not easy, but it's the most commonly talked about technique, I think, in making a painting is to pay attention to your values. If you have a lot of contrast, a lot of lightest lights and darkest darks in your painting, I think you'll find that you like it more and that it feels more successful. And all of that has to do with just the anatomy of our eyes. Our eyes were designed to see contrast. So just think about it. The contrast with makeup. Women put makeup on, or actors put makeup on, so that you can really see their features, the eyes, the mouth. We print black text on white paper. That's the biggest contrast that you can make. Or think about white trim on a house that has a dark colored base color. It pops, and it's just all about how our eyes were originally designed. To see the lion coming across the savanna, the darker color lion coming across the lighter color savanna. That's how we were designed, and so that's why it works in paintings and in architecture and in everything else. You'll see it everywhere once you start to pay attention to values. So that's what artists mean when they talk about values. They don't mean morals. They mean the lights and darks in a painting. So you can see that I'm alternating actually values in between my sort of drawings of the hillside, the lines of the hillside that I've drawn there. And I know we're starting to get close to the end because this is about as far as I got with this painting today. It was a great time. It was really fun to work on this. It was not something I thought about doing when I woke up this morning. In fact, I have that other painting from Cannon Beach that I made a movie of last week that I've been working on all week. Also, we finished a paper mache project this week. I'll show you what I made. A couple of bowls, and the boys made some cylinders and a couple of bowls, and we painted them with acrylic. But yeah, this was just today. Just came up today, and I thought, let me just take a small watercolor block and just play around with this and see what can come up with it, and if I can put something together that reminds me of that hike. And it was great. And I'll see if I can finish the painting this weekend, if I can get into the flow. Or maybe we'll go out for another hike, who knows? It's supposed to be rainy. Rain and lots of mud, but not very cold, so that'll be awesome. There we are. And there's the whole thing. Oh, that's right, I put some color on the other side of the path. That palette that you see over to the right, that's just from the Goodwill. No big deal. $2 purchase. There's the end. Thanks for joining me today, and happy painting, and stay warm. More mud walking. I don't know. These videos are very fun. They'll be fun when I slip and fall and bruise my tailbone, because then you'll be like, oh yeah, I told you so. Why'd you go out hiking in the rain in January? Because I'm having such a good time here. And look at how many other people have been before me out here having a good time, slipping in the mud, even if they have on proper hiking boots. Oh my Lord. Woo! Woo, woo, woo! Whoa, that was a close call. Oh, good times. Anyway, it's very beautiful. And it's starting to rain, so